My name is Ahmed Al-Qarni. I was 34 years old when I was fired from my teaching position at a prestigious Riyadh school for refusing to hide my Christian faith. In September 2020, after 12 years of successful teaching, my conversion to Christianity was discovered and I lost everything I had built in my career. But what happened next proved that when God closes one door, He opens others you never imagined possible. I grew up in Riyadh in a middle-class Saudi family. My father worked for the government, and my mother was a homemaker. Education was highly valued in our home, and I excelled academically from a young age. I particularly loved Arabic language and literature, the beauty of classical poetry, the richness of the language, the eloquence of great writers. By the time I finished high school, I knew I wanted to become a teacher. I studied Arabic language and Islamic studies at King Saud University, graduating with honors at age 22. My education included extensive Islamic theology. I was trained not just to teach Arabic, but to integrate Islamic values and teachings into every aspect of language instruction. In Saudi Arabia, education and religion are inseparable. Every teacher is expected to be a model of Islamic practice and to reinforce religious values through their teaching. I began teaching at Al Faisal Academy, one of Riyadh's most prestigious private schools, when I was 22. The school served children of wealthy Saudi families and emphasized both academic excellence and Islamic education. I taught Arabic language and literature to middle school students, and I loved the work. Watching students discover the beauty of their language, helping struggling learners improve, seeing the moment when complex grammar concepts finally clicked, these experiences brought deep satisfaction. I was a good teacher. My students consistently performed well on standardized tests. Parents praised my dedication and effectiveness, and the school administration valued my work. Over 12 years, I earned multiple Teacher of the Year awards and was promoted to Senior Arabic Instructor with additional responsibilities mentoring newer teachers. I had built a reputation as an excellent educator who combined subject mastery with genuine care for students. My life was stable and comfortable. I married at 26 to a woman my family had known for years, and we had 2 children. We lived modestly but securely on my teaching salary. I was respected in my community as an educated professional who was raising the next generation of Saudi youth. By all measures, I was a successful man living a good life. But spiritually, I felt empty. I performed Islamic prayers 5 times daily, fasted during Ramadan, and attended mosque regularly. I taught Islamic values to my students as part of my curriculum, but none of it felt genuine or meaningful. Religion was obligation, cultural identity, social expectation, but not relationship with God or personal transformation. The rituals felt hollow, the prayers mechanical, the theology distant and impersonal. I had always assumed this emptiness was normal, that faith was supposed to be about discipline and duty rather than joy or connection. But deep down, I wondered if there was supposed to be more, some sense of God's presence, some peace that transcended circumstances, some assurance that all this religious performance actually mattered. My conversion journey began unexpectedly through the internet in early 2019. I was researching Arabic poetry for a lesson plan when I stumbled across Christian Arabic literature, poems and writings by Arab Christians throughout history. I was surprised by the beauty and depth of these works, which I had never encountered in my university education that focused exclusively on Islamic Arabic literature. Curiosity led me to explore further. I began reading Christian websites in Arabic, watching testimony videos of Muslims who had converted to Christianity, and eventually reading the Bible online. I was careful to do this research only in private, knowing that even curiosity about Christianity could be viewed suspiciously in Saudi Arabia. The Jesus I encountered in the Gospels was completely different from the Prophet Isa that Islam acknowledged. He spoke with authority that seemed more than prophetic. He performed miracles demonstrating power over nature and death. He offered salvation as gift rather than reward for religious performance. Most striking to me as an educator, he taught with wisdom and compassion that resonated deeply. His parables, his interactions with different people, his way of explaining profound truths through simple stories. I was particularly moved by Jesus' treatment of people. He valued individuals that society dismissed, women, children, the poor, the sick, the sinful. He challenged religious leaders who used their authority to burden people rather than to serve them. He offered grace and forgiveness rather than judgment and condemnation. As a teacher who worked with young people daily, I was drawn to his model of patient instruction, genuine care, and transformative influence. Over several months of secret study, I became convinced that Christianity was true and that Jesus was who he claimed to be, God in human form who died to save humanity. But accepting this truth intellectually created enormous practical problems. My entire career was built within Islamic educational framework. I taught in a school that existed to reinforce Islamic values. My professional reputation depended on being a model Muslim educator. Acknowledging conversion to Christianity would end my career immediately. Have you ever discovered truth that threatened everything you had built professionally? That was my reality as I wrestled with what to do about my newfound faith in Jesus Christ. In August 2020, I made the decision to surrender my life to Jesus Christ. The decision came after months of reading the Bible, watching testimonies, and wrestling with what I believed to be true. One evening when my family was asleep, I prayed alone in my study, asking Jesus to forgive my sins and become my Lord and Savior. The peace that followed was profound, not emotional excitement, but deep settled certainty that I had made the right choice. But that certainty immediately collided with fear about consequences. I knew that as a teacher in Saudi Arabia's Islamic education system, my conversion put my entire career at risk. I began living a double life, appearing as a devout Muslim teacher during the day while privately following Jesus at home. I continued leading Islamic prayers with students, teaching Quranic verses and Arabic lessons, and maintaining the appearance of being a model Muslim educator, all while my heart belonged to Christ. The duplicity was spiritually crushing. Every time I taught Islamic content I no longer believed, every time I led students in prayers to Allah, every time I reinforced values rooted in Islam rather than Christianity, I felt like a hypocrite. I was teaching lies to students who trusted me, living a deception that betrayed both my profession and my faith. Jesus' words haunted me. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. I connected with Saudi Arabia's underground Christian community through careful online inquiries. These believers met secretly in homes, risking their safety to worship Christ. They warned me about the costs of open conversion, loss of employment, family rejection, possible legal prosecution. But they also testified that Jesus was worth any sacrifice, and that living authentically as his follower was better than maintaining comfortable deception. The crisis came in September 2020 through my oldest student, a bright 14-year-old named Khalid, who often stayed after class to discuss literature and ideas. He had noticed changes in how I taught. I had begun emphasizing themes of grace, forgiveness, and personal transformation in our analysis of classical poetry, unconsciously filtering texts through my Christian worldview rather than Islamic interpretation. One afternoon, Khalid asked me directly, "Teacher Ahmed, do you still believe in Islam? You teach differently than you used to. You talk about God's love more than his judgment, about grace more than law. Are you becoming liberal? Or have you been influenced by Western ideas?" His question caught me completely off guard. I tried to deflect, saying that good literature explores universal human themes that transcend any single religious perspective. But Khalid was perceptive. "That sounds like what Christians say," he observed. "My father warns me about teachers who might have been corrupted by Christian ideas. Has that happened to you?" I knew I should deny everything, should reassure him that I remained a faithful Muslim, should diffuse his suspicions immediately. But standing before this student who trusted me, who was asking an honest question, I couldn't bring myself to lie directly. My hesitation and visible discomfort told him everything he needed to know. Khalid didn't accuse me or threaten to report me. Instead, he looked genuinely confused and concerned. "Please be careful, Teacher Ahmed," he said quietly. "If people think you've become Christian, you could lose your job or worse. I won't say anything, but you should be more careful about how you teach." I thanked him for his concern and discretion, but I knew the situation had fundamentally changed. If a 14-year-old student had noticed my different perspective, others would notice too. And unlike Khalid, they might not stay silent. My fears were confirmed 2 days later when the school principal called me to his office. He told me that concerns had been raised about my teaching approach, that I was allegedly incorporating un-Islamic ideas into my lessons, that I was emphasizing themes more consistent with Christianity than Islam, that some parents were questioning whether I was still a suitable Islamic role model for their children. The principal, who had always been supportive of my work, looked genuinely troubled. He asked me directly whether I had converted to Christianity or been influenced by Christian ideas. The moment of truth had arrived, I could lie to save my career, or I could acknowledge my faith and face the consequences. I chose honesty. Yes, I said quietly. I have become a follower of Jesus Christ. I believe he is the Son of God who died for my sins and rose from the dead. My faith has changed, and I cannot deny what I believe to be true. The principal's face showed shock, disappointment, and something like grief. He had mentored me for years, had celebrated my teaching successes, had recommended me for awards and promotions. Now I had become a problem he didn't know how to solve. Have you ever watched respect turn to disappointment in someone's eyes because you chose faith over their approval? That was my reality as my principal processed the reality that his star teacher had committed apostasy. The principal explained that my conversion created an impossible situation. Saudi schools, especially prestigious private institutions like Al Faisal Academy, existed to provide education within Islamic framework. Teachers were expected to be role models of Islamic faith and practice. An apostate teacher, regardless of how excellent his academic instruction might be, could not fulfill this role. Parents were already expressing concerns, and word was spreading among families whose children I taught. He gave me two options. First, I could publicly recant my conversion, affirm that I remained a faithful Muslim, and demonstrate renewed commitment to Islamic practice through visible participation in school religious activities. If I chose this path, the school would support me and help manage the concerned parents by assuring them my momentary confusion had been corrected. The second option was immediate termination. I would be asked to resign, sparing the school the necessity of formally firing me and allowing me to preserve some dignity in my departure. But either way, he made clear I could not continue teaching at Al Faisal Academy while openly maintaining Christian faith. I asked for 24 hours to consider the options, though I already knew my answer. That night, I prayed desperately about what to do. Part of me wanted to take the easy path, recant publicly, return to pretending to be Muslim, keep my job and income that supported my family. I could be a secret Christian, I rationalized, maintaining Islamic appearance while believing Christian truth privately. But I knew this rationalization was self-deception. Having finally stopped living the double life, having acknowledged my faith honestly even at great cost, I couldn't return to the deception. Jesus had said that whoever denied him before others would be denied before the Father in heaven. The price of my career wasn't worth losing my soul. The next morning, I returned to the principal's office and submitted my resignation. I thanked him for 12 years of opportunity and support, acknowledged that my conversion had created problems I regretted, but explained that I couldn't deny Jesus Christ to keep my position. The principal accepted my resignation with evident sadness, praising my teaching while lamenting what he viewed as my tragic spiritual confusion. The school administration moved quickly to manage the situation. They announced to parents that I was leaving for personal reasons to pursue other opportunities, avoiding explicit mention of my conversion to prevent the scandal from spreading. They asked me to clear out my classroom within 48 hours and to have no contact with students or parents after my departure. Packing up my classroom was emotionally devastating. 12 years of teaching, awards on the walls, student thank you notes, books I had used to inspire countless students, posters of Arabic poetry that had sparked meaningful discussions. I was leaving behind not just a job but a calling, a community, a significant part of my identity. I had invested my adult life in this career, and it was ending because I had chosen Jesus. My wife's reaction to my termination was anger mixed with terror. We had 2 young children and a mortgage. My teaching salary was our family's primary income. She had known nothing about my conversion. I had hidden it from her as carefully as from my colleagues. Learning about my faith change and job loss simultaneously was overwhelming for her. She demanded to know how I could make such a drastic decision without consulting her, how I could jeopardize our family's financial security for religious beliefs, how I could throw away a successful career for what she viewed as foreign spiritual delusion. Within a week, she filed for divorce and moved with our children to her parents' home. She would not remain married to an apostate who had destroyed their family's stability and reputation. My extended family's response was equally harsh. My father said I had brought shame on the Al-Qarni name, that no son of his would reject Islam for Christianity. My siblings cut contact. The family wanted distance from my disgrace as quickly as possible. Within 2 weeks of acknowledging my faith, I had lost my career, my wife, my children, my family, my reputation, and my income. I moved into a small apartment alone, unemployed, isolated, facing an uncertain future. By every worldly measure, My decision to follow Jesus had been catastrophic. The despair was overwhelming. I had worked for 12 years to build my teaching career, had earned respect and recognition, had found purpose in educating young people. Now it was all gone. I questioned whether the cost had been too high, whether I had made a terrible mistake. I prayed desperately, asking Jesus why he had allowed such complete loss, begging for some sign that my faith hadn't destroyed my life for nothing. Have you ever lost everything for choosing what you believed was right? That was my reality as I sat in an empty apartment, jobless and alone, wondering what would come next. The underground Christian community in Riyadh became my lifeline during those darkest weeks. These believers welcomed me with compassion and practical support I desperately needed. They didn't just offer prayers and spiritual encouragement. They helped with immediate needs like food and rent, provided emotional support as I processed the trauma of losing everything, and connected me with resources I hadn't known existed. One believer particularly impacted my situation. Marcus was a British expatriate who worked with an international Christian education organization that operated schools in various Middle Eastern countries outside Saudi Arabia. When he heard my story, an experienced Arabic teacher who had lost his position for converting to Christianity, he immediately saw opportunity. Marcus explained that Christian schools throughout the Middle East desperately needed qualified Arabic teachers, especially native speakers with proper credentials and teaching experience. Many of these schools serve Christian communities in places like Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt, where religious freedom was greater than in Saudi Arabia. My expertise was valuable, and my testimony would actually be an asset rather than a liability in these contexts. Within 3 weeks of my termination from Al Faisal Academy, Marcus had connected me with 3 different Christian schools interested in my application. All 3 offered positions teaching Arabic language and literature within Christian educational frameworks. Instead of hiding my faith to keep employment, these schools specifically valued my Christian perspective and wanted teachers who could integrate faith with academic instruction. I accepted a position at a Christian international school in Amman, Jordan. The school served both local Jordanian Christians and expatriate families from various countries. They needed an Arabic language specialist who could teach both native speakers advancing in classical Arabic and non-native speakers learning the language. My qualifications were perfect for what they needed, and they offered a salary comparable to what I had earned in Riyadh. The move to Jordan required leaving Saudi Arabia permanently. Once I relocated for employment at a Christian institution, returning to Saudi Arabia would be extremely difficult and potentially dangerous. But I had nothing keeping me in Riyadh anymore. My wife had divorced me, my family had disowned me, and my professional reputation was destroyed. Jordan offered a fresh start in a country with greater religious freedom. In November 2020, just 2 months after losing my teaching position in Riyadh, I began teaching at the Christian school in Amman. The contrast was staggering. Instead of hiding my faith, I could pray openly with colleagues before classes. Instead of teaching Islamic values I no longer believed, I could explore how faith informs literature and language from a Christian perspective. Instead of living in constant fear of discovery, I could be authentic about who I was. The work itself was deeply fulfilling in ways my previous teaching had never been. I wasn't just instructing students in Arabic grammar and classical poetry. I was helping them understand how language shapes worldview, how literature reflects humanity's search for meaning, how communication can build bridges between cultures. I could discuss themes of grace, redemption, sacrifice, and hope through literary analysis without fear of being accused of un-Islamic teaching. My students were incredible. Some were Jordanian Christians eager to deepen their understanding of Arabic, their heritage language. Others were expatriate children from Western countries learning Arabic as a foreign language. They brought diverse perspectives and genuine curiosity. Teaching them was refreshing after years of working in an environment where questioning was discouraged and religious conformity was expected. The school administration valued my expertise and supported my professional development. Within 6 months, I was promoted to head of the Arabic department, overseeing curriculum development and mentoring other teachers. The school recognized my abilities and gave me opportunities to contribute beyond just classroom instruction. But God's provision went beyond just professional restoration. The Christian community in Amman welcomed me warmly, and I found genuine fellowship with believers who understood the cost of following Christ. I joined a church with a vibrant Arabic-speaking congregation, many of whom were also converts from Islam who had relocated to Jordan for greater freedom. Through the church, I met Miriam, a Palestinian Christian woman who worked as a translator. She had grown up in a Christian family, but had faced her own trials when her family fled violence in Gaza. We connected over shared experiences of loss and faith, and our friendship gradually developed into something deeper. 2 years after my divorce, Miriam and I married in a beautiful ceremony at our church in Amman. My new marriage was built on shared faith from the beginning, fundamentally different from my first marriage that had been arranged by families and based on cultural compatibility. Miriam understood my calling as a Christian educator and supported my work. We prayed together, studied scripture together, and served together in church ministry. Have you experienced God opening doors you never knew existed after He closed doors you thought were essential? That was my reality as I discovered that Jesus had better plans than anything I had lost. Today, 5 years after being fired from my teaching position in Riyadh, I live with purpose and peace that my previous success never provided. I teach Arabic at the same Christian school in Amman, now serving as academic director overseeing all language instruction. My students flourish under instruction that integrates academic excellence with spiritual formation. My marriage to Miriam brings joy and partnership my first marriage lacked. The loss of my children remains the most painful ongoing grief. They live in Saudi Arabia with their mother, being raised to view me as the father who abandoned them for foolish religious beliefs. Saudi law gives me no custody or visitation rights as an apostate. I pray daily that God will eventually give me opportunity to explain my choice, and that they might understand, and perhaps even follow Jesus themselves. This wound may never fully heal in this life, but I trust God's faithfulness even in this area of continuing pain. My professional life has expanded beyond what I imagined possible. I've published articles on teaching Arabic as a second language, presented at educational conferences throughout the Middle East, and consulted with other Christian schools developing Arabic programs. The expertise I developed in Saudi Arabia now serves God's kingdom in ways I never anticipated. What seemed like the end of my teaching career was actually a transition to more meaningful work. Perhaps most significantly, my testimony reaches other Muslim educators considering Christianity. Through the underground network and online platforms, teachers from across the Middle East contact me asking how I survived losing my career and whether Jesus is worth such sacrifice. I tell them honestly about the cost, the professional loss, the family rejection, the financial uncertainty. But I also testify that knowing Christ and serving Him authentically is worth infinitely more than any career built on denying Him. Some of these seekers have come to faith after hearing my story. Several are now teaching at Christian schools in various countries, using their professional skills to serve Jesus rather than hiding their faith to maintain positions in Islamic institutions. Watching God work through my testimony to reach others gives eternal significance to my temporary losses. The school where I teach has become more than just my workplace. It's my ministry platform. Students from Muslim backgrounds occasionally enroll, and I have opportunities to demonstrate Christ's love through excellent instruction and genuine care. Some have asked questions about why a successful Saudi teacher would convert to Christianity and relocate for his faith. These conversations have led several to explore the gospel themselves. I'm asking you, what are you building your career on? What would you do if serving Christ authentically required losing your professional position? Because I learned that any career requiring you to hide who you are or deny what you believe will eventually become a prison, even if it's a comfortable one. But work that flows from authentic faith, even if it costs everything temporarily, brings freedom and purpose that success built on deception never can. God's doors are better than any human institution can provide. When I lost my teaching position in Saudi Arabia, I thought my career was over. Instead, God was redirecting me to work that matters eternally, opening doors to serve Him that were invisible from inside my previous life. The prestigious school that fired me was a closed door that made room for better doors I hadn't known existed. 5 years ago, I thought being fired would destroy me professionally. Instead, it freed me to discover my true calling, not just teaching Arabic, but forming young people within Christian worldview, serving Christ openly rather than hiding my faith, and using my expertise for God's kingdom rather than for institutions requiring spiritual compromise. I lost a career that demanded deception. I gained a calling that celebrates authenticity. I lost a prestigious position that required denying Christ. I gained meaningful work that honors Him. And that exchange, trading worldly success for kingdom purpose, has been worth every sacrifice required. Jesus said that whoever loses his life for his sake will find it. I testify that this promise is absolutely true. What I found in losing my teaching career for Christ is worth infinitely more than what I lost. The doors God opened were better than any doors man could close.